makes me want to have a bowl. And then we drive on from there because while a man who had 18 callers to his home for cocaine while the Gardaí were there avoids jail, we have a cop, an ex-cop over in Europe who's fighting a 14 billion euro drugs trade. So, like, you know, what are we doing here? Like, 14 billion euro, like, and I would definitely say that that's an undervaluation of the market. But what are we actually doing here? This cop, Ian O'Sullivan, who I featured, or Michael O'Sullivan, sorry, who I featured on the news a few times as well before. He's the head of Marine Analysis and Operations Centre, MOAC, and they're based in Portugal, and it's an international anti-drug trafficking agency that was founded by EU member states, including Ireland, back in the early 2000s. He's a former Garda assistant commissioner, and he was talking about his work, and he says that in a wide... he was saying that he believed that trawlers are being used to meet ships off of the coast of Ireland to bring in large quantities of drugs. He says that gangs are also using speedboats designed to evade capture by law enforcement in Irish waters and across coastlines of Europe. And he also revealed that the Irish criminals are now senior players in the upper echelons of the multi-billion euro drug trafficking industry. So Ireland, the drug organised crime gangs here are leading the way for the importation of drugs into Europe. He talks about the cocaine highway here, which is the 10-degree line of latitude in the Atlantic. That's known as the cocaine highway, and it's used by smugglers to avoid detection by European naval services who don't go down that far. But again, what I believe they're getting at here with this headline, with this story, and they're plugging the shit out of their work. Like, you know, they're on about, like, oh, we seized 2 billion euro this year. Like, it's the most we've ever seized, like, you know. It's only ever going to be increasing. And they're talking here now about this cocaine highway that they need to tackle. And this cocaine highway is being patrolled by the Senegalese military naval ships. But obviously they're quite underfunded, I suppose, and don't have the same tools that the MOAC have. So MOAC now, I'd imagine that this headline is they're going to be lobbying the European Union to kind of say, hey, give us more money to go down there and monitor this place because drugs are coming through there. More money being taken away from vital services that could actually help deter some people from engaging in abusive drug behaviours by giving out money to the likes of George Rose and the organisations that he works for. Alone, Try, there's loads of them out there. Also then this guy Michael O'Sullivan, he was actually involved in arresting Christy Kinahan back in 1986. That's when he was a member of what they're calling here the Mockies. So that's a group of undercover Gardaí tasked with dealing with the arrival of drugs into Ireland. That's the first time I've ever heard of the Mockies. And after that, Kinahan received a 5-year sentence, but he obviously got out then, and because he, you know, as we know, the Kinahans, like, they're freaking senior players there in this, like. So back in 1986, this guy was arresting the Kinahans, and now almost 30 years later, he's still dealing with the Kinahans. And not just the Kinahans here as well, because he's saying that the Irish criminals are an integral part of the organised crime in Europe, and they are all known to one another, and they all do business with one another. It says that the Kinahan cartel, while they were the most prominent cartel known in Ireland, they are not alone here in Ireland in the business that they're doing. There's more and more groups now on the rise, which is going to see an increase in the violence here on the streets as these people battle it out for the different turfs and territories. And that's no secret that sort of behaviour carries on. And Ian, I keep calling him Ian, but Michael also says that MOAC began work in 2004 as a deconfliction operation which enables law enforcement agencies from European countries and the US Drugs Enforcement Agency to communicate better. The agency now run by O'Sullivan enables the rapid sharing of intelligence between different agencies. That data is then used to target cocaine-laden vessels as they make their way to Europe. The current situation, Michael says, is that the countries attached to MOAC have seized by the 1st of June more than 2.2 billion euro in drugs, We seized more in the first 6 months of this year than the whole of last year, he explains. And keep in mind, guys, last year was the start of the lockdowns. This year we're deep into them, and we're seeing more and more drugs now being detected by the people looking for them. But does that mean that they're actually catching, preventing drugs getting to the streets? No, they're not. There's still drugs in the streets. I can guarantee you, like, even with the 2.2 billion euro worth of drugs that they're after seizing here, that there's still more than enough drugs there to go around out in today's out in Irish streets. The most recent high-profile seizure was centred around an operation in the Dutch port of Rotterdam, but there has also been major hauls off of Spain and in other areas where massive shipments have landed. The market has been estimated at 9 billion euro, but I would now estimate it closer to 14 billion euro across Europe. I still think that's an underestimation of the market that's actually out there for drugs. When you think about it, really, like cannabis in Ireland could be worth up to 2 billion euro to the tax. You know, it could bring in over 10 billion euro, but worth 2 billion then to the exchequer, 2.3 billion then off of that, like, you know, 23% tax. Moak believe the Atlantic is the best place to target shipments, with O'Sullivan describing how easier it is to disrupt the industrial scale of organised crime at sea rather than on the streets. Last year, the agency intercepted 19 to 20 vessels, including a semi-submersible which was built in the Amazon jungle. And that goes to show the ingenuity of these guys out there as well. Like, they get lads are out in the jungle, they're building bloody submarines and everything. And again, like, I'm watching Narcos again, I keep on plugging that fucking show, like, but I was watching the stuff that the boys were doing, like the money that they had coming in, and that the politicians that they had in their pockets, and that the cops, the authorities, like, I can't imagine that much has fucking changed, really. Like, do you know, I wonder, like, if Michael there now, like, and one of the cartels, somebody, you know, his old buddy Christie came along to him and said, "Come here, Mike, here's now a couple of cool million there for yourself, look, go on there and buy the wife something nice, like, and look, there's a shipment coming in there, look, we've one wrapped up nicely for you there, look, there's going to be €1 million worth of coke and that, but look, don't mind the other 10 ships coming in behind it at all, like, don't pay attention to them now at all, Michael." Do you know, the potential for corruption, it's fucking great, like, and it's an incredibly dangerous job then as well, you know, and you see that in the Narcos too, like with the killing of DEA officers and stuff like that, and like, if the portrayal of that DEA officer inside and that the Mexican guy who was killed in the Mexico part of it, if you haven't watched, sorry, spoiler, bit late to warn you on that one, but like, if the portrayal of him, like, he was a diehard, like, he was on about a time when he was in a nightclub and there was people smoking weed in the bloody bathroom, and he went in and he got his head kicked in because there was 2 of them there and only one of him, and he was even off duty, like, but he put his family's life at risk because of his dedication to his job for this kind of ego-driven thing he has in his head, like, that he's doing good, like, you know, that he's a good guy, he's one of the good guys, like, but in reality there's no such thing as good and bad guys, really, like, when you think about it, like cops are not good guys. If you put on a uniform in the morning and you're a cop, if you're a politician, you're not a good guy. That does not make you a good guy. It's your actions that dictate whether you're a good guy. And going out there putting your family's life at risk to target these organised crime gangs is certainly not a good way to do it. The right way for these DA officers to be doing anything would have been to go out and campaign for the end of this bloody prohibition that empowered these gangs so much. It's crazy to think, like, and there was a death recently of a Spanish customs officer when they were trying to board a boat that's believed to be smuggling drugs into the country. The helicopter in which they were on crashed, and the officer on board died. There was 2 survivors of that crash, but still, you know what I mean? They're out there putting their lives on the line to try to prevent these drugs reaching the streets of Ireland or Europe, whatever. Oh, it's a massive failure. Like, just end it once and for all. Control, regulate and control, educate the consumers, and that's the only way you're going to do it. Like, they have a €14 billion drugs trade across Europe, they're saying. I believe it to be worth a lot more. But you think these guys are going to be able to do this? Like this headline that I shared back in June, above in Donegal, they don't even have a bloody drugs, undercover drugs unit. You know, that's how backwards we are, like, you know. And then meanwhile, the Kinahans out there, and they got everything that they could dream of, like, you know, because it's afforded to them. The money that they're making because of the prohibition, the boys got better tools than our Gardaí, do you know. the Gardaí think they're watching the Kinnans, but the Kinnans are probably watching the Gardaí. Do you know? Because they can afford to. They got more money than them. It makes me want to have a bowl.